Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Think of the strong women you know, maybe even yourself, who smile brightly while carrying unseen burdens. Their strength inspires us, yet their silence hides truths we all must learn to face. Today, I invite you to look beyond the smile, to recognize the hidden struggles, and to discover how Jung's insights can help us transform pain into a deeper, more authentic strength. The Carl Jung taught us that the persona is the mask we wear to meet the demands of the external world. It is not a lie, but it is not the whole truth either. The persona allows us to function socially, to be accepted, and to present the parts of ourselves that the world values. For strong women, this persona often takes the form of resilience, courage, and a smile that radiates strength. Yet behind this carefully constructed mask lies the shadow, the hidden aspects of the self that contain unacknowledged suffering, fears, and vulnerabilities. In this tension between the smiling persona and the aching shadow, we find the paradox of strong women hiding pain. From a Jungian perspective, the smile of a strong woman is not merely an expression of cheerfulness. It is a symbolic gesture, a projection of her persona into the world. It reassures others, protects her social standing, and preserves the image of competence and grace. But this smile also functions as a barrier. It conceals what Jung described as the raw and unintegrated parts of the psyche. The shadow holds these repressed emotions: grief, exhaustion, disappointment, fear of failure, emotions that society often teaches women they must never show. The smile becomes a shield, not just against others but sometimes against herself. For to let the pain surface might threaten the fragile balance she has worked so hard to maintain. Why does this happen so often with women we perceive as strong? Jung's insights into archetypes shed light on this. Women are frequently shaped by archetypal roles that live in the collective unconscious. The mother, the caregiver, the nurturer, these archetypes reward sacrifice, composure, and resilience. A woman who embodies these roles feels pressure to remain steadfast and smiling even when her inner life is breaking. To show her pain would mean breaking the archetype and confronting not only her own vulnerability, but also society's discomfort with women who refuse to play their expected roles. Thus, the smile is not just personal, it is archetypal. It represents the weight of generations of expectations. From the outside, we often misinterpret this smile. We assume it means strength without cost, resilience without fracture. Yet Jung would remind us that the psyche cannot be split without consequence. The more a woman invests in her persona of strength, the more powerful her shadow of unacknowledged pain becomes. This is why the silent struggles of strong women often run so deep. They are not simply hiding a few personal troubles. They are concealing an entire shadow self that has been pushed aside for years, perhaps even decades. The more radiant the smile, the heavier the shadow behind it. To understand this dynamic in a human way, think of a woman who is admired for her ability to handle everything: family, career, relationships, and responsibilities, all with a smile. To others, she seems unstoppable. Yet inside, she may be carrying grief from past losses, unspoken exhaustion from constant caregiving, or quiet despair over dreams she never pursued. Jung's psychology teaches us that the more she represses these truths, the more they remain active in her unconscious, shaping her behavior, draining her energy, and manifesting in subtle signs of distress: anxiety, sleeplessness, irritability, or unexplained sadness. The smile then becomes a paradox. It shows strength while simultaneously revealing that something is being concealed. Jung described the process of individuation as bringing the unconscious into consciousness, integrating shadow and persona into a more authentic whole. For strong women, this would mean acknowledging that the smile is not the full story. It would mean daring to look beneath the mask, to honor the shadow, and to give space to the pain that has been hidden. This does not diminish their strength, rather it deepens it. A woman who smiles while hiding her pain is indeed strong, but a woman who allows herself to integrate her smile with her tears becomes whole. Jung would say that true strength lies not in the denial of suffering, but in the courage to confront it. From an educational standpoint, it is essential to understand that the persona is necessary but incomplete. Without it, we could not function in the world. Yet if we cling to it too tightly, we lose touch with the deeper truths of the psyche. Strong women who rely exclusively on the persona of resilience risk alienating themselves from their own needs and vulnerabilities. This alienation does not erase the shadow. It only drives it deeper, where it operates unconsciously and often destructively. The smile, then, becomes both a protection and a prison. It preserves dignity in the face of hardship, but it also locks away the very emotions that need to be expressed for healing to occur. Carl Jung's insights challenge us to see beyond appearances. When we encounter a strong woman who smiles through pain, we must not assume her smile tells the whole story. Instead, we must recognize it as a mask that both protects and conceals. Behind it lies a shadow that longs for acknowledgement, a part of the self that yearns for integration. To truly honor such women, we must create spaces where they can lay down their masks, where they can reveal both their strength and their suffering without fear of judgment or rejection. Jung would remind us that only by bringing these hidden parts into consciousness can true healing and individuation occur. In the end, the mask of the persona and the smile of strength teach us a profound truth, that every outward expression carries an inward story. Strong women smile not because they have no pain, but because they have learned to bear it silently. Jung's wisdom invites us to look deeper, to see the shadow behind the smile, and to understand that the greatest strength is not in hiding pain, but in embracing it as part of the journey toward wholeness. Carl Jung often reminded us that the psyche is not merely a collection of conscious choices, but a vast field shaped by forces we do not always see. When we look at the lives of strong women, who appear resilient yet hide their deepest pain, we uncover the role of emotional repression. Emotional repression in women's psychology is not simply an act of stubborn silence. It is a defense mechanism born of necessity, both for survival and for social acceptance. Jung's insights into repression and the unconscious allow us to understand why women, who seem powerful, radiant, and composed, often carry unspoken sorrows deep within. To repress emotion, Jung explained, is to push aspects of the psyche into the unconscious, to deny them expression in the outer world. For many women, the repression of pain begins early in life. Messages from family culture or society tell them to be strong, not to cry, or to hold it together. Vulnerability is subtly shamed while composure is praised. Over time, the unconscious learns that certain emotions are not safe to express openly. These unexpressed feelings are not erased, however, they are buried. Jung would remind us that what is buried in the unconscious does not disappear. It remains alive, influencing behavior, shaping relationships, and leaking into life in indirect ways. This is why many strong women wear smiles even while their hearts ache. The smile becomes a socially acceptable face for the world, a persona that shows competence, grace, and resilience. Yet beneath the smile lies the shadow self, filled with repressed grief, loneliness, or disappointment. Jung wrote extensively about the danger of ignoring the shadow, because repression creates psychic tension. That tension must find release, and if it does not find healthy expression, it emerges in symptoms, anxiety, depression, burnout, or physical illness. Thus, the cost of hiding pain is often invisible but profound, leaving the individual fragmented, exhausted, or silently suffering. When we think about unconscious coping mechanisms in women, we must remember that these defenses are not signs of weakness, but of adaptation. A woman may smile to shield herself from pity, to protect loved ones from worry, or to prevent herself from collapsing under the weight of her own emotions. The unconscious, in its wisdom, creates mechanisms like denial, minimization, or detachment to help her continue functioning. Jung understood this deeply. Repression is not chosen in malice, but arises as a necessary tool when the conscious mind cannot yet face what the unconscious contains. The problem is not repression itself, but remaining trapped in it, for long-term denial of pain eventually blocks individuation, the path towards psychological wholeness. To humanize this idea, imagine a woman who has endured loss, disappointment, or betrayal. Outwardly, she continues to perform, at work, in her family, among friends, appearing strong and capable. People praise her for her resilience. Yet in private, when the day is done, she feels the heaviness of her silence. She longs to cry, to express, to break open, but the inner voice conditioned by society whispers, "Don't show weakness." This inner conflict reflects the battle between persona and shadow. The persona demands strength, while the shadow carries vulnerability. By repressing her emotions, she holds the mask of the persona in place, but the shadow grows heavier in the unconscious, demanding recognition. Jung's psychology also helps us see that repression is not just personal but collective. The archetypes that shape feminine identity, such as the caregiver or the selfless mother, often leave little room for expressions of personal anguish. Women embodying these roles may believe that their pain is unimportant compared to the needs of others. In this way, emotional repression is reinforced by cultural narratives, not just personal choice. The archetypal demand to be endlessly strong becomes a prison, and the smile becomes the mask of that imprisonment. Jung's concept of the collective unconscious reveals how deep these patterns run. Women do not repress only for themselves, but for the roles history has handed them. The psychological consequence of this repression is profound. Jung taught that the unconscious will not remain silent forever. Repressed emotions manifest through projection, physical ailments, or compulsive behaviors. For example, a woman who represses anger may find herself irritable in trivial situations, or she may attract relationships that replay her hidden pain. Another may experience fatigue or chronic illness, the body carrying what the psyche cannot express. These are not coincidences but the language of the unconscious, insisting that what has been denied must eventually come to light. Jung would say that repression delays confrontation with the shadow, but it cannot erase it. From an educational perspective, understanding repression allows us to see strong women in a new light. Their smiles are not lies, they are survival strategies. Their silence is not emptiness, it is the holding of unspoken truths. Jung challenges us to look deeper, to honor both the strength of the persona and the hidden pain of the shadow. Emotional repression is not a sign that someone has failed, it is evidence of their courage to endure. But true individuation requires that repression eventually give way to acknowledgement. The hidden pain must be spoken, not necessarily to the world, but at least to the self. Only then can the psyche move toward wholeness. Carl Jung believed that integration of the shadow was the path to healing. For strong women, this means learning to see their smile not as a betrayal of truth, but as a symbol of survival. Yet survival is not enough. The repressed emotions, grief, fear, anger, or longing, must be faced, honored. And this process is difficult, but it is liberating. By acknowledging their pain, strong women do not lose their strength, they deepen it. Their resilience becomes more authentic, grounded not in repression but in integration. Ultimately, Jung's insights reveal that emotional repression in women is a reflection of both personal and collective forces. It is the smile hiding sorrow, the silence concealing grief, the persona guarding the shadow. To educate ourselves in this truth is to recognize that healing requires more than admiration of strength. It requires compassion for the unseen struggles that strength often conceals. Jung's wisdom calls us to honor the full human story, where both light and shadow belong, and where repression can be transformed into the conscious embrace of wholeness. Carl Jung often reminded us that we do not live only as individuals, but also as carriers of something larger, what he called the collective unconscious. Within this vast psychic inheritance lie archetypes, universal patterns that shape how we think, feel, and behave. When we speak of strong women who smile while hiding their deepest pain, we cannot understand this dynamic without recognizing the archetype of the strong woman itself. This archetype is not merely a cultural expectation of our modern world. It is an ancient pattern that has traveled through generations, shaping the roles women feel compelled to embody. And though it has given rise to immense resilience and fortitude, it has also placed a heavy burden of silence upon those who carry it. The archetype of the strong woman demands grace under pressure, composure in chaos, and endurance in the face of suffering. She is admired for her ability to hold everything together, her family, her work, her relationships, while appearing unshaken. But Jung would point out that when one lives too fully inside an archetype, the individual risks losing connection to her own unique self. The archetype becomes a mask, much like the persona, but even more powerful because it is not consciously chosen. It rises from the collective unconscious and weaves itself into the very fabric of one's identity. In this way, women often find themselves not simply smiling by choice, but compelled to smile because they are unconsciously living out a role humanity has long expected them to play. This explains why women mask vulnerability with strength. It is not only a personal strategy, it is an archetypal inheritance. From mothers who endured silently for their children, to grandmothers who carried unspoken grief, the lineage of silence is passed down. A woman who suffers in silence today does not do so alone. She is, in some ways, embodying the pattern of all those before her who did the same. Jung's insight into the collective unconscious helps us see that when one woman hides her pain behind a smile, she is not simply protecting herself from judgment. She is living out a collective story that has been told for centuries. But archetypes are double-edged. While they provide strength and resilience, they also demand conformity. The strong woman archetype is praised by society because it offers stability. It reassures others that someone is capable, composed, and reliable. Yet this same archetype denies women the freedom to show weakness or to admit exhaustion. It punishes the expression of vulnerability, not through words but through cultural narratives that equate strength with silence. Jung would argue that this dynamic reveals the tension between the individual and the collective. The individual woman may long to express her sorrow, but the collective archetype insists she remain silent, smiling, and steady. This archetypal burden explains the cost of emotional resilience psychology. When resilience is demanded without space for vulnerability, the psyche pays a heavy price. The shadow fills with unacknowledged pain, which may manifest in subtle ways. Disconnection in relationships, emotional numbness, or unexplained sadness. Jung's work teaches us that the unconscious will always find expression. What is not spoken becomes a weight in the body, a restlessness in the heart, or a distortion in behavior. This is why many strong women, while admired outwardly, privately feel depleted or invisible. The archetype sustains them in public but abandons them in solitude. To bring this into human terms, imagine a woman who has endured years of responsibility, carrying her family and career with unwavering commitment. She smiles through holidays, offers support to friends, and remains the dependable figure others can always turn to. Yet when she is alone, she feels the quiet ache of being unseen. Her smile is genuine but incomplete. It is both an expression of love and a mask of survival. Jung would say that this conflict arises because she has identified too closely with the archetype of the strong woman, forgetting the wholeness of her own individuality. The archetype demands endurance, but her true self longs for acknowledgement of her vulnerability. Education in Jungian thought reveals that archetypes, though powerful, must be made conscious. If left unconscious, they dominate us. The strong woman archetype is noble, but when unconscious, it becomes tyrannical, allowing no space for rest, weakness, or honesty. Jung believed that individuation requires us to confront these archetypes, to honor them but not to be enslaved by them. For strong women, this means recognizing that strength does not require silence, that vulnerability does not diminish resilience, and that wholeness is found not in embodying an archetype perfectly, but in integrating both its light and shadow. This is why Jung's view on feminine archetypes is so vital. He did not see women as merely victims of these patterns, but as participants who could choose to become conscious of them. By recognizing the archetype of the strong woman, a woman can step back and ask herself, am I smiling because I feel joy or because I feel compelled to hide? In asking this question, she begins to loosen the grip of the archetype. She makes what was unconscious conscious, and in doing so, she opens the path toward freedom. Ultimately, the archetypal burden carried by strong women shows us the power of collective forces in shaping individual lives. Their smiles are not only personal choices, but reflections of ancient stories still alive in the collective unconscious. Jung teaches us that while these stories cannot be erased, they can be transformed. By bringing them into awareness, women can learn to honor their strength without silencing their pain. They can live not only as archetypes but as whole, unique individuals who embrace both resilience and vulnerability. This integration, Jung would say, is the true measure of individuation, not the endless performance of strength, but the courage to be fully human. Carl Jung believed that the purpose of life was individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating all aspects of the self, the conscious and the unconscious, the persona and the shadow, the strengths and the vulnerabilities. When we speak about strong women who smile while hiding their deepest pain, we inevitably arrive at this Jungian truth. Healing cannot come from denial or repression, but from integration. The smile that conceals pain is not wrong, nor is the strength that sustains it meaningless. But without acknowledging what lies beneath that smile, the psyche remains divided, and true wholeness cannot be achieved. For Jung, individuation meant not merely surviving life's challenges, but growing through them, weaving together the parts of ourselves that are most at odds. In the case of strong women, this means bringing vulnerability into dialogue with resilience. It means allowing grief, sorrow, and exhaustion to be seen alongside determination, courage, and composure. To hide pain indefinitely is to split the psyche into fragments, one part living for the world, the other living in silence. Jung warned that what is not brought into consciousness will direct our lives, and we will call it fate. For women who conceal their suffering behind a smile, fate often takes the form of quiet despair, broken relationships, or physical manifestations of stress. Yet Jung's insights remind us that this fate can be transformed if the shadow, the hidden pain, is embraced and made conscious. Healing hidden wounds through Jungian insights requires a re-education of the psyche. We must learn that strength and vulnerability are not opposites, but complements. The strong woman who hides her pain has been conditioned to believe that tears are weakness, that admitting exhaustion is failure, that showing her shadow would disappoint those who look up to her. But Jung would remind her that the shadow is not an enemy, it is a teacher. Within the shadow lies the very material needed for growth. Pain, when integrated, becomes wisdom. Vulnerability, when accepted, becomes intimacy. By confronting her shadow, the strong woman does not lose her identity. She discovers a deeper, fuller version of herself. Consider, for example, a woman who has spent years projecting the persona of stability. She holds her family together, excels in her career, and inspires others with her apparent ease. Yet privately she feels as though she is drowning, unable to voice her fears or cry without guilt. Her smile becomes her mask, her persona. Jung would say that her healing begins when she acknowledges that the persona is not her entire being. She must recognize that her private pain is not a flaw but part of her wholeness. To allow someone trusted to witness her tears, to admit she is tired, to give voice to her silent struggles. These acts are not weakness but steps toward individuation. The unconscious wounds that once drained her energy begin to release their grip as they are brought into the light of awareness. From an educational standpoint, we can understand this process as the balancing of psychic opposites. Jung often spoke of the need to reconcile polarities masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious, persona and shadow. In the same way, the polarity between strength and vulnerability must be reconciled. When women are forced to live entirely in the archetype of the strong woman, they lose the balancing force of tenderness, receptivity, and openness. This imbalance creates suffering. But when they integrate vulnerability, they become not weaker but stronger, because their strength is now grounded in authenticity rather than performance. Jung's psychology teaches that the path to individuation always involves the tension of opposites, and healing emerges when we can hold both truths together. The cultural implications of this are profound. Jung understood that the collective unconscious shapes not only individuals but societies. If society continues to demand strength without vulnerability, women will continue to suffer in silence, smiling while hiding their deepest pain. But if we, as a culture, begin to honor vulnerability as part of strength, we shift the archetype itself. Jung would say that this is how collective transformation begins. When individuals confront their shadow, they open pathways for society to do the same. A strong woman who allows herself to be seen in her pain does not only liberate herself, she becomes a symbol that liberates others. Her authenticity gives permission for others to embrace their own. This is why Jung emphasized the importance of consciousness. Without awareness, we remain trapped in archetypes and patterns that no longer serve us. With awareness, we can transform them. For the strong woman, individuation means recognizing that the smile she wears has value, but it is not the whole truth. Her true wholeness lies in being both the smiling, resilient figure and the vulnerable, wounded soul. By embracing both, she embodies the fullness of human experience. She is no longer imprisoned by the archetype of strength, but enriched by her authenticity. To humanize this further, think of the profound relief a woman feels when she finally admits perhaps in a quiet conversation with a trusted friend. I am not always as strong as I look. In that moment, the smile that once masked her suffering becomes a bridge to intimacy. Her pain, spoken aloud, becomes lighter. Her strength, no longer bound to silence, becomes freer. This act of integrating her shadow does not diminish her, it allows her to live more honestly. Jung would say that she has taken a step on the path of individuation, turning her hidden wounds into sources of wisdom and compassion. In this light, Jung's insights offer not only an explanation but a direction. Strong women need not abandon their resilience, they must expand it. They must learn that the smile which once concealed can also reveal not just strength but humanity. Individuation is not about erasing masks, but about loosening their hold, about recognizing that behind every mask lies a face that deserves to be seen. Carl Jung's wisdom calls us to this integration, to the transformation of suffering into consciousness, and to the realization that true strength is not the absence of pain, but the courage to embrace it fully. Carl Jung once reminded us that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. When we consider why strong women smile while hiding their deepest pain, we realize that their smiles are not signs of deception, but symbols of survival. The persona they present, the repression of emotions, the archetypal burdens they carry, and the path toward individuation all reveal a profound psychological truth. Strength and vulnerability are inseparable. We must understand that the smile is not false. It is a mask shaped by society, by archetypes, and by the unconscious itself. Yet behind that mask lies a shadow longing to be acknowledged. The silent struggles of strong women remind us that resilience often comes at the cost of unspoken suffering. Jung's insights show us that the only path forward is integration, not denial, the willingness to hold both light and shadow, both radiance and pain. To honor strong women is not merely to admire their strength, but to create spaces where they can be whole, where their tears are not weakness but truth, where their silence is not assumed to mean peace, and where their shadow is welcomed as part of their humanity. Individuation calls each of us, and especially those women who have borne the weight of silence, to embrace not just the persona of strength, but the deeper wholeness of authenticity. In the end, the greatest strength is not the ability to hide pain, but the courage to reveal it, to integrate it, and to transform it into wisdom. And perhaps this is Carl Jung's greatest gift, to us the reminder that true healing comes not from pretending we are unbroken, but from daring to bring our hidden wounds into the light of consciousness, where they become not chains, but wings.